Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do a quick little tag video today. This is the DNF Tag video challenge. This was really popular on BookTube several months ago, and I got tagged in it a few times, but I never got around to making the video. So I'm trying to get myself back into a schedule for recording, so I thought this would be a fun one to kick it off. In case you are not familiar with the terminology, DNF means did not finish. So a book that you just kind of abandoned at some point in your reading process, you put it down and said, I'm not going to read this anymore. I don't DNF a lot, and that may have been why I kind of put this video off. But as I was reviewing the questions, I was like, actually, I do have some things to say about this subject. So the very first question, just going straight into it, is do you DNF? And for me, the answer is not very often. And I'm not sure why, because a good answer would be like, oh, once I start something, I really like to see it through all the way. And like, that's just not typically a hang up I usually have. I usually don't have a problem walking away from something that is not holding my interest, or, turning a movie off halfway through, walking away from a TV show, several episodes in, completing chores around my house. Like, I don't usually have a problem with DNFing things, but when it comes to books, for some reason, I don't usually do that. And I don't know if it has to do with just some sort of a completionist complex I have buried deep down inside of me, or maybe it's just because I typically pick really great books that I know that I'm going to like. But no, I do not usually DNF. The next question is, if you DNF, do you count it towards your books that you read that month? Absolutely not. So in the end of a month, I like to kind of tally up what all I read. I do these videos here where I show you what I read that month and what I plan to read the next month. If I quit a book and I don't finish it, I am not going to count it in my tally. Now, if I read the majority of it, or if I have something to say about it, I might bring it up in those types of discussions, count it towards, I might have something to say about it, but I'm not going to count it towards like my tally at the end of the month, because you didn't read it if you didn't finish it. The next question is there a difference between DNFing and just putting it down for a bit? I say sure. That happened to me a couple of times. Most notably, though, is this book right here, Weave World by Clive Barker. I was reading this book last year, maybe in October or September last year, and I did like it. I really liked Clive Barker's writing style. It was very atmospheric. Oh, look, I found a bookmark. That's cool. I didn't really have any complaints, but at some point, I think I was maybe over 60% in, I just put it down and started reading something else and never came back to it. So I guess you could say that while it was imaginative and very interesting, and like I said, I loved his writing style, I don't think that either the plot or the characters, or probably a mix of both, I don't think they really captured my attention well enough to keep with it. So again, if somebody asked me, I feel like DNF has such a negative connotation, but I don't really have anything bad to say about this book. I enjoyed it while I was reading it, but for some reason I put it down and I never came back. So I suppose that I DNF'd it. Do I have plans to come back to that one? Maybe. Like, I'd never say never. Like I said, I don't have anything negative necessarily to say about it. I just put it down one day and never came back. So next up is name a popular book that you DNF'd. So I don't remember at what point it was during The Witcher. I think it was, I would guess I was maybe 20 or 30% into Baptism of Fire. And the same thing that happened with Weave World happened with this book. I don't remember making a conscious decision to say, I'm done with this book, I'm done with the series, I'm quitting. But at some point during Baptism of Fire, I put it down and I never came back. So I guess I DNF'd The Witcher as a series, and I DNF'd that book. Again, can I see myself returning to the series and reading it? Possibly someday. I've got a lot of life ahead of me, and I don't think I'll run out of books to read, but there may come a time where I've kind of checked a bunch of important stuff off of my list and think I would really like to go back to that series, because there is a lot about The Witcher that I really, really liked. And it wasn't a moment that I thought, oh, I'm done with this. I'm tired. I don't like XYZ. I think at the time, this is one of the first series I picked up after kind of getting back into reading. And I think as I was immersing myself into the reading culture and making these new friends and getting all these recommendations and finding YouTube and stuff like that, I think I just became so overwhelmed with more books that I wanted to read that the excitement over the books that were coming outweighed my excitement, my current excitement at the time for the Witcher book that I was on. So I can see myself returning to this world for sure, but it is not on my current radar. Another series that I DNF'd was Mistborn Era 2. I checked my bookmark and it seems like I was about 140 pages in when I just decided, no thanks. Again, I didn't hate it at all. There are things about it that I liked, but the characters weren't really grabbing me. We know I'm a very character-driven reader, and none of the characters really did anything for me. And the story just felt very small, and it just wasn't super interesting to me. And so at the time that I was reading it, I had a very exciting month of reading planned, and I just leapfrogged right over this. And I don't remember saying, I'm done with this, I'm no longer reading it. But I did put it down, and I never came back. And again, might I read Mistborn Era 2 someday? Possibly, but it's definitely not on my, the next year or two of things I have planned to read. Okay, moving on. The next question says, what book do you wish that you had DNF'd? And I kind of hate to say this, but I just read Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. And on one hand, I am glad that I read it because it wasn't very long, page count wise. And, you know, it gave me a lot to think about and there was some good discussion that came from it. But if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't really enjoy it. And I felt like it really wasn't what I was hoping it would be. I didn't read it. And I know I did dislike the book. It's a strange book to kind of wrap my head around what I felt about it. But in the end, I'm glad that I read it. But I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And I remember several times while reading it thinking, you don't have to read this, you know, like you could put this down at any point and just move on. And I think that is some of my hang up with the concept of DNFing sometimes, is just this constant, I want to read the book because I want to have that experience under my belt. I want to know the whole story, but I also want to participate in the conversations and have an opinion when asked. And I feel like if you DNF a book, then you kind of lose your right to have a strong opinion about it. And that's probably silly of me to say because everyone has an opinion. Even if you read 5 pages of something, you at least have your initial opinion. But I felt like in order to give it a fair shot, I needed to read the whole thing. But looking back, I don't feel like the experience was necessarily enjoyable. And I don't feel like I'm a better person walking away from it. I don't feel like it enriched my, my character or anything. So I have a hard time because I couldn't think of another one that I thought I really wished I had DNF'd that. But when I saw the question, that was the first thing that came to my mind. So probably Blood Meridian is one that I probably would have been better off just to, you know, read until I got really tired of it and then just allowed myself to say, no, thank you, not my favorite. Okay, next up is, do you ever attempt to read a book that you DNF? Like, do you ever attempt to pick it up and say, I'm going to give this another shot? And that's happened twice for me, and both times I'm so glad that I gave it another shot. The first one was, this is going to have a glare, but the first one was Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton. The first time I tried to read that, I think it was just a mood thing. I think I got about 25% in and was just never really clicking with it. Like I couldn't visualize what was going on. The story just seemed kind of jumbled, and maybe it was the fact that it was kind of told from a different storytelling perspective than I was used to at the time, but I just mostly chalk it up to mood. And I felt good about just putting my bookmark in, pushing pause on my audiobook and walking away from that. But then I did reread it earlier this year. I read the whole thing and I liked it quite a bit. It was a really good adventure, and I actually loved the way that it was formatted, the storytelling. So yeah, that's one that I put down and I considered it a DNF. I just thought it's okay sometimes to say, I don't think it's for me. But I went back around because of a scheduled reread and attempted it again, and I really, really enjoyed it the second time around. And another one that I actually DNF'd and picked back up a second time was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And I think I made it to 30 or 40% in this one before I DNF'd it. And with this one, it wasn't like I was hating it or just thought, oh, this is awful. The only reason I put it down was because it just wasn't what I was looking for at the moment. I was fresh back into fantasy, and I really just wanted more fantasy. And I was afraid that I was just going to get myself into another dystopian YA type series, which I thoroughly enjoyed when I read those back in the day when I was a YA. But now I am just an A. And I was like, I'm just not sure this is what I was looking for. But then I got lots of reinforcements and encouragement from other people saying, finish the book because the book does get better. But man, books 2 and 3, they are really, really good. There's a big tonal shift. And, you know, if you like book 1, you're going to love books 2 and 3. And several months later, I picked this back up again, finished it, did end up liking it. And of course, like everyone said, I loved books 2 and 3. And that year that I read it, this is one of my favorite trilogies I read the whole year. And I still need to go back and get working on the second trilogy, the one that kind of butts up with this one and is a continuation of the story. I have not read those yet, but I am excited to get to them. So just because something is not jiving with you at the time, don't be afraid to come back around to it. But if you're hating something, like you hate it, then it's also okay to just say, I just don't think that book is for me. Okay. So the next question is, what do you do with books that you DNF? And I'm not really big into unhauling, so unless it's something that I just hated so much that I don't even want to look at it anymore, I usually just keep it on the shelf. But since I am running very, very low on bookshelf space, like this is prime real estate behind me right now, so I may be getting to the point where if I quit something, if I don't like it, if I read it and don't have fond memories of it, I may start rotating things off the shelf and getting rid of some stuff. But the book collector in me kind of hates doing that. But the practical reader in me thinks, well, if you're not going to recommend it to somebody, if you know you're not going to finish it yourself, then it probably shouldn't take up space on the bookshelf. So I'm sure I'm getting to the point where I'll start being a little more picky and choosy about what stays on the shelf. But as of now, I pretty much just put it back on the shelf because you never know. All right, let's see here. Do you find yourself choosing less risky books because of your stance on DNFing? Maybe subconsciously I do, because like I said, when it comes to books, for some reason, I have a hard time walking away. I have a hard time not being a completionist. But I think more than anything, I'm still only maybe about 2 years in to being a reader again. And so I still feel like I have so many bucket list books to read that I just know I'm going to love, that I think mostly I'm just picking great books that I know I'm going to love. Before I even start them, I know this is going to be right up my alley because they come so highly recommended by people that I trust, or I've just done my research and they have a great reputation. So I think more than anything right now, I don't think I'm choosing books because I'm scared that they'll be risky and I'll DNF them. I think I'm just still going through like kind of the greatest hits right now. So you're not getting a lot of lemons when you're reading books that are just notoriously wonderful. So the other question I had is this isn't on the list, and you guys can help me out. At what point do you change from I started reading it, I read the first couple chapters, but then I put it down because I didn't want to read it. At what point does that concept turn into a DNF? So like an example I have would be, right now I'm reading Promise of Blood. And I've tried to read this book twice before now. And I would read the first 2 chapters and just put it down. And I never considered that a DNF because there was no reason I put it down other than the fact that I just wasn't in the mood for it. I would read the first couple chapters and go, I do want to read this, but not right now. Another one is Clara and the Sun. This is like a really popular sci-fi book that was being recommended a lot. I kept seeing these accolades and reviews, and everyone was like, Clara and the Sun. And I got it from the library, and I read, I don't know, probably 50 pages of it, and it's not a very long book. But I just got to the point where I was just like, I don't think I'm going to read this. I read a little bit, enough to get an idea of what it felt like, and I just thought, you know, I don't think I want to read this actually. And so I just considered it changing my mind. Like, I was going to read it, but now I'm not. But looking back, I was like, is that a DNF? Like, how far do you get into a book? Like, what's the percentage that you get into a book when it changes from, I don't think I'm going to read this, like, I don't think I'll like this, to like, you didn't finish it? I don't know. That's a question I have. So anyway, what is your stance on DNFing? Do you DNF books? What is one that you DNF'd it because you hated it? Like, I gotta know. And I want to know if you have hated and DNF'd a book that I love. So anyway, drop in the comments. Let's have a conversation. Let me know. And as always, thanks for watching.